Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to part 6 of the Excel video tutorial. Now this time we're going to talk about something called an if statement. This is a rather complicated idea, but it will just make your life so much easier if you're going to be using Excel. It's really important that you understand what an if statement is. So basically I went ahead and I've drawn some stuff here on the Excel table. You can see I wrote if statement at the top. This is a little flow chart that kind of shows the idea of an if statement. Basically what happens is Excel is going to evaluate a condition. It's going to evaluate whether or not that condition is either true or false. If the condition is true, it's going to perform some type of action. If it's false, it's going to perform a different action. That's really all it does. So again, the condition has to be either true or false. Now this condition is sometimes called a Boolean expression. A Boolean expression is a true or false statement. So let's give an example. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. Is that a true or false statement? That is true. Very much true. So, what about 5 greater than 3? Is that a true or false statement? That's a false statement. So these are just examples of different Boolean expressions that we can plug in. Basically, conditions that can be evaluated. So let's just come up with an example real quick. So here's the basic syntax of how you tell Excel, hey, I want to do this if statement thing. So you type in equals if, and then you open and close your parentheses. Now inside of your parentheses, what you're going to do is, the first thing you do is if you look up here where my mouse is, it says logical test. Logical test is in bold. That's the first thing you're going to plug in. Your test is basically your condition. It's going to test whether or not whatever you put here is true or false. So let's do 1 plus 1 equals 2. So this says, okay, if 1 plus 1 equals 2, now we have to put a comma. So that was my logical test. Now the next thing that's bold, you see it says value if true. So if 1 plus 1 equals 2, comma, what will we do? What do we want Excel to do if this is true? If it's true, I want to say awesome. It will basically make this cell here just say the word awesome. Anytime you type words like the word awesome, it has to be typed with quotation marks. Otherwise, it won't work. So again, if 1 plus 1 equals 2, the value if true, we're going to set the cell to just say awesome. And now we're going to put a comma, and then we'll say what the alternate action will be if this statement in the front is false. So value if false, if it's false, we'll just say boo, that's not good. So now we've completed the if statement. We've got our open. Anytime you open a parentheses, you always have to close it. So we opened one parentheses, we also closed one. So this if statement is complete. Press enter, and now it says awesome. That was pretty obvious because, clearly 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now if I change this to if 10 is greater than 50, that's obviously false. 10 is not greater than 50. Duh. It's going to say boo because it's false. So I press enter, now it says boo. That's because it's false. So let's take this up a notch. So another thing you can do, we've been doing 10 greater than 50, 1 greater than whatever. We can actually just type some random numbers in Excel right here. So let's type in a 1 here and a 5 there. So instead of actually typing 10 greater than 50, we could just type, if this cell right here is less than this cell, then return the word awesome. Otherwise, return boo. So for this one, honestly, you can see that it's going to return the word awesome because I9 is less than I10, because right now I9 equals 1 and I10 equals 5. So it's going to be true, which means it's awesome. So that's just, kind of basic idea. Another thing you can do is say if this is false, you don't have to return the word boo. You can also just put another if statement. So you can do what's called embedding if statements. So you can say, okay, if I9 is less than I10, which it is in this case, return awesome. Otherwise, if it's not true, then do something else. So I'll show you what I mean down here. I've kind of prepared some information. We're going to look at just a basic grading chart, and this is going to drive the point home for these embedded if statements. So let's pretend like you've got some students and you've got their scores on a test. So we're just going to make a small little table here. Format cells, put a border, and we'll just boldface this. We'll also center, and we'll put a little blue because blue is awesome. All right, so let's just make up some students. So you got Greg, Ryan, Colin, Casey, Garrett, we've got Zach, Brittany, man, this is kind of challenging. Brett, Steven. We'll just use some of the other names just to have some more data. Okay, so you've got all these different students. Okay, so let's say this person scored a 50, 70, 90, 95, 20, 80, 72, 64, 28, 59, 78, and 100. So let's also add another column. I'm just going to copy paste this, delete this, and then I'm going to put result right here. So we're going to be grading these people. We've got all these different students and they've got all these different scores on an exam. So an excellent is going to be the result if they scored 90 or above. Decent will be the score if they decent will be the result if they scored between 70 and 89. So if they scored 70, it'd be decent. Now if they're below 70, so 69 or under, then they're terrible. So let's just go ahead and figure out what this result's going to be. I just expanded the column a little bit. So result. So let's go ahead and type in our if statement. So if, all right, logical test. What are we testing? We're testing the score. So if the score here is greater than or equal to 90, so you can do this greater than and equal symbol together. That means greater than or equal. Because if it's equal to 90, we want to, say excellent, right? So we don't want to just put greater than 90. We got to put greater than or equal. So if F34, this cell here, the score is greater than or equal to 90, then what are we going to do? What is the value if true? Well, if this is true, then the value is just going to say, excellent, he did very good. Now, what is the value if false? If it's not greater than or equal to 90, then that means it has to be below 90. So if the score is below 90, then what do we want to say? Do you want to say decent or do you want to say terrible? Well, that depends on their score. So in order to figure out what their score is, you have to do another if statement. So we're embedding another if statement. So now we're going to say, okay, well, if it's not greater than or equal to 90, then we're going to look at whether or not it is greater than or equal to 70, because if it's above 70, that means it has to be between 70 and 89. We know it's not above 90 because we already evaluated that in the beginning, and we knew that wasn't true because now we're here in this false area, value if false section, I guess I should say. So now we're saying, okay, because it's not greater than or equal to 90, we're going to say, okay, well now if the cell is greater than or equal to 70, then what's going to happen? Okay, if it's larger than 70, then it has to be decent. All right. Whoops. Now I have to do one more thing. If it's not equal, if the grade is not greater than or equal to 70, then we're going to return the value terrible because that means it's below 70. So now we're going to close the parentheses here. So this basically completed the second if statement. And then we close parentheses one more time and it'll close off the entire complete if statement. So I press enter and now it shows the result is terrible. So what's cool is you can just copy this down and it'll say all of their scores right here. So you can see Brittany did excellent. She made a 100. Garrett did terrible. He made a 59. Here's another student named Brittany that did decent, so it's just a nice way of doing things. So again, I'll just recap kind of the logic behind this. We said, okay, if F34, which is this score right here, if it's greater than or equal to 90, meaning that it's, at least 90 or higher, then we're going to do what? We are going to, return the value excellent. It has to be in quotation marks. That's the value if true. If the value is not true, if the, F34 is not larger than 90, then what are we going to do? We're going to look at another if statement. And that's going to look at, well, whether or not is this cell F34, the score, is it larger than 70 at least? And if it is larger than 70, then that means it's somewhere between 70 and 89, so it'll return the value decent. Otherwise, if it's false, if it's not larger than 70, that means it has to be below 70, and it's definitely not, above 90, so it has to be terrible. So that's kind of the logic there. And again, we just copied this down. We didn't have to worry about locking in cells since each one of these is a variable, value. You can just, copy it down with this little trick there. So anyways, that's what you need to know about an if statement. Very, very powerful tool. Review this video several times if you need to. Understand this. See you in the next video.